Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
Welcome to Good Morning Outdoors, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the outdoor hospitality industry. From campgrounds and RV parks to glamping, outdoor resorts, adventure travel, and ecotourism, we'll be discussing all things outdoor travel and hospitality, so join us on Good Morning Outdoors every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts. Hey, Robert, good morning. How are you today? Matt. So hello, everyone joining us live. We have a last-minute surprise, very special guest, Robert Preston, somebody who I've had the good fortune to get to know a little bit over the last few months. Big fan of Robert and what he's building and what he's built in the RV park and outdoor hospitality world. Definitely doing a lot of great things in our industry, and so happy to have you to join us today. So with that being said, why don't you jump in and share with the listeners who you are, what you're up to, what you do.
Thank you, Matt. First thing is I'm a little bit lost, right? So Matt called me this morning about an hour ago and says, hey, can you jump on a podcast? I'm like, sure. And then I show up a couple minutes ago. He's like, oh, it's live. I'm like, all right, we'll figure it out. No, very excited to be here this morning. Thank you, Matt. And I'm sure we miss Alex as well. Hopefully feels better.
Yeah.
But, thank you for being on the podcast this morning. My name is Robert Preston, as you can see on the screen and as Matt introduced. So that's the easy part. I am the founder and CEO of Unhitched RV and Unhitched Management and a couple other subsidiaries around that. Also co-founder of Climb Capital, which is our investment arm in the RV space. And let's see, long story condensed. I was a Marine Corps pilot, got tired of getting shot at. Started buying apartment complexes and mobile home parks, started buying RV parks, realized RV parks are a lot better and I like them a lot more and they're a lot more fun. So I sold mobile homes and most of the apartments, and now that's what we do.
Awesome. And you're up to how many RV parks now?
We are at 14. We own 14 and then we manage 2 and looking to probably double that pretty quickly.
Amazing. Love it. Yeah, you're a busy man, and love following along with what you're working on. So excited to get your input. I think some of the stuff we're due to talk about today is really relevant to the expertise you bring to the table. So
thank you.
Excited for that. And without further ado, let's jump in here. So second week in a row of a special guest. And because last week I was at the Live Oak Bank RV Park Symposium, which was a ton of fun. It was a very small, intimate, but powerful event. And it was in Wilmington at Live Oak Bank headquarters.
Yeah. I used to live in Wilmington, actually.
What's that?
I used to live in Wilmington.
Oh, nice. Oh, so you're familiar. Yeah. So we spent some time in Wrightsville Beach and spent some time at the headquarters. Which, have you ever been to the headquarters?
No, I haven't. And you must be way more important in this industry because I didn't even get an invite.
No, yeah, that's not true. And that was my biggest takeaway, was what an opportunity to be a fly on the wall. You know, that's what writing on LinkedIn has gotten me. Caught the attention of Nick Parker over at Live Oak Bank. And I just, I got to observe and listen and learn a ton. And, I'm hopefully someone at Live Oak Bank will be listening to this and be on the invite next year. So yes, and it was a quick event. Flew in on Wednesday, dinner and cocktail reception, and then all day long on Thursday of talks and presentations, and then got a nice walk on the beach on Friday because I literally flew out of the snow in Syracuse into 70-degree weather in Wilmington. So that was awesome. Much needed for me. So I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the takeaways. I think one particularly is super relevant to what you're working on and what the expertise you bring, Robert. First, I want to say the campus there, I think they've got close to 1,100 employees. They're a big name in our business, but they've got a super interesting backstory. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, but they've only been around for 10, 12 years, and they started very small, and the way they came about was getting into niches, small business niches, really understanding the niche, getting a competitive advantage that way. And then, growing kind of vertical by vertical. So they started with a tiny little office and 5 employees. And now 12 years later, they've got a beautiful campus on a lake with 1,100 employees. They've got 2 spectacular restaurants on site. They've got like a NCAA collegiate level fitness center. They've got personal training, doctor's office. We've met several people that started there as interns like 10 years ago, and now they're books of business. So I think in a world where that kind of loyalty in a corporate setting is increasingly rare, it was really refreshing to see that. And then so big fans of what they're doing. On that last Thursday, we talked about a lot about valuation and segmentation and categorization of the industry. And that really segued into an interesting, we kind of derailed the presentations and went back and forth for like an hour about the parallels between the hotel and lodging industry, traditional hospitality, and our of outdoor hospitality.
Right.
And shout out to Rafael Correa, the president of Blue Water Development. He's the one who sparked this conversation. They've obviously got a great track record, and they're in the hotel business and lodging business, as well as RV resorts and other outdoor hospitality. So the concept that he brought up was around real estate investment trust, REIT, structure and eligibility in the tax code. And I'm no expert at this, but REITs came on the scene in the 60s and 70s, and then lodging REITs and hotel REITs really came on the scene in the 90s. And there was some massaging of the tax code and laws to create this pathway for lodging REITs, and that's what really sparked the structure that we have today, where, like, look at Marriott. They're the top operator of hotel rooms in the world, in the country, but they only own about 50 hotels. So they're managers, they lease hotels, and honestly, it comes down to good income versus bad income. And when you're a real estate investment trust, it's all about leases and rental income versus your store income, your honey wagon, your activities, your whatever. So super relevant kind of pathway. And you are sitting here building an awesome brand and business in third-party management. So it kind of all tied back to where are valuations going? Where is transaction volume going? What does the investment landscape look like? And it's such an interesting little niche. Like, it's small. There's a lot of demand. So I feel like that's kind of artificially elevated the investment activity and the transaction volume, because there's, relative to the number of investment opportunities there's a high number of buyers.
Right. For sure.
And it's kind of detached from the commercial real estate market, where things are starting to turn there. But, 2022, 2023, and 2024, the story was, the commercial real estate market's dead.
Right.
That wasn't really the story with campgrounds. But then, the financing, there's so many aspects. So I want to hear from you, where do you see the investment landscape today? How do you see third-party managers fitting into the equation? I'm dying to hear from you. your thoughts on that.
Man, that's a lot to cover there. And I was actually meeting with one of our larger investment partners last night, and at dinner we were discussing something similar here. And I think maybe I'll take it a step back, go a little bit bigger picture or maybe smaller picture, and see what here's my hypothesis and theory, right? So in outdoor hospitality, specifically RV spaces, you can probably run one or two properties really well as an owner operator, right? And if that's your passion, that's your job, that's your love, you're there, it's your baby, you'll probably run it better than anyone else, quite frankly. You can do one or two of those that way, geography permitting. And then you start stepping up like 3 to 6 or 7, and that's a really dangerous place to be as far as park owners and quantity, because at that point you can no longer do it yourself. It's not it's not owner operated anymore. You're going to have to need people and staff, and you need quality people and staff to run a portfolio like that. And most, if you take the general revenue or general purchase price of most parks that transact, they're probably most of them falling between like $2 to $5 million. So, if you got 3 or 6 of those, they're not producing enough management fee or enough management revenue for you really to operate a good team. So if you get stuck there into that, I don't know, we'll call it 3 to 7-ish range, then, a couple things start happening. You either get burnout or overtasked, or your properties actually start to go backwards because, there's not sufficient management there. And then, there's a tipping point there somewhere 10, 12, 15, where you do have enough of a portfolio to really support a professional management staff, and provide that to the properties, and then the properties to actually start to excel and do better. And so I think that's the management landscape from an ownership perspective. And I think it's important for people to understand that. If you're going to build a management company, or you're going to build an ownership company that has management in it, then obviously you don't go from 2 to 20. So there's an investment phase in building a management company, where you're going to have to probably put capital in, and be in a negative, likely a negative cash flow perspective as the company itself, to build through that process. So I think that's an important point from an owner's perspective. I see lots of owners who have done that and done that well. And I think a couple of them are actually on here that we're going to talk about later today, but they've pushed through that point and got to the other side. And like us, now we are in that position where adding another 2 or 3 properties, the scalability doesn't really affect the rest of the portfolio, right? It actually has some benefit. And so that's when we made the decision almost 6 months ago, to start going to the market and saying, hey, we built this team. We have our portfolio of properties, we're brand, et cetera, but we can bring those same efficiencies now to an owner. And there's not that many management companies in the space, and not to get myself in trouble, I don't think there's not that many great management companies either. So, I guess to tie this, or why it's important to the discussion here about investability, is that fundamentally any asset class, particularly real estate, in order for it to be really scalable and for it to be what we'll call institutional level investments, those are the two big hurdles are management and debt. And in the RV space, neither one of them really exist at a scale that you would be even comparable to any other commercial asset class. So, so part of the mantra for our company is that we're seeking to grow our business, we're seeking to grow our management company, seeking to grow our assets, but in general, as much as that we can do to help other owners or lenders or management companies to get the asset class to that point, that is, we will reap an immense reward as an industry to get it to that point. So we really need, we really need dependable institutional level management, and we need the same in debt. And when we do that, then the public companies or the REITs or the larger capital will start pouring into the space. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. And you've been pretty active on the acquisition front as of late, right?
Yeah.
And so what's been your experience with appetite from capital, whether it be equity capital or debt capital, in recent weeks, months?
For me, it's been pretty great, right? I've got, there's a lot of interest and a lot of eagerness right now. And I'm not bragging on myself. I think I'm bragging on the team, is that then the capital, once they know they have a good operator and something to get behind, that's what they're looking for, right? It's not a deal. They're not looking for deals. They're looking for the operator. And once they can believe in that, it's I don't know, I would say almost wide open at this point.
Love to hear that. So you're pretty much entirely focused in the East. That's correct
for now.
Yeah. You're
our current portfolio is Southeast. Yes.
Awesome. And so we did have a really interesting presentation at the symposium from Bolt Farm Treehouse. Are you familiar with them at all?
No, I'm not.
So they're more in the glamping world, but they're in Tennessee.
Okay.
And it's an incredible story. And it ties in with what you just spoke about, of having incredible managers and team. And that's, you nailed a bunch of points that I trumpet about this industry, is that it's so people oriented, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to grow a big portfolio, the scary part to me is, you yourself, Robert Preston, you can't be at every park all the time.
No.
Even your, executive level team that works under you can't be at every park all the time. You've got to inspire your on-site people to treat it as much and as close to mom and pop did. If you're buying it from mom and pop, that's kind of the game in my mind, is get 80 to 90% as close to what mom and pop delivered, with the hands-on 24/7 approach that a lot of mom and pops do. And then you've got to build a team of regionals who supervise those on sites. And you've got to have regionals that will go and pop in at each property and look at it like an owner and say, clean up that junk, pick up that trash, repaint that bathhouse, make this place sparkle, improve the check-in process. There's cigarette butts in the fire pit or whatever. And that's hard, right? You've got to build a good team. You've got to compensate them well. You've got to inspire them to create a good guest experience. And if you can't do that, find another business.
There's nothing passive in hospitality in general.
Yeah.
And I would say, at least from our experience, specifically outdoor, there's nothing passive about this real estate market.
Right. For sure. And that was my takeaway from the Bolt Farm Treehouse story. I mean, they are on the high end and they're booked out years in advance. They've been like 93% occupied with these incredible tree houses and domes on the side of a bluff, overlooking protected lands, and got heated marble floors, and like the check-in process, they know your name, and it's just 5-star service across the board. And I don't think the takeaway is that everybody has to serve that high end of the market, but you can take those lessons and apply it to your level of product, your level of service, and your customer base.
Yeah, again, not taking anything away from them, but that's a great example of when that's the owner's passion, when they're building something truly remarkable, then you will have an unlimited amount of customers, no doubt. Yeah. And that is a phenomenal strategy. But there is a significant difference, or just a different thought process that goes into when you want to build 25 of them, right?
Right.
That's different, and I look at someone who has done that well would be Ritz-Carlton, right? That's one of the very few brands that can do it at scale and provide that level of service. And I'm sure they have some mess ups and stuff here, but that's one of the companies I really enjoy studying, because
nice.
Again, I'm not saying it's easy by any means, but building a single entity, single resort that has that and bring it there, is incredibly difficult, no doubt. But then multiplying it 20 or 30 times is where it becomes extremely difficult.
Right. Yeah. Well said. Well said. So we got some news stories we want to cover here. So let's jump into some news here. Starting off with the sad story here, the passing of industry titan Bud Steyer, super involved in the Wisconsin Association of Campground Owners and OHI, the outdoor hospitality industry, longtime park owner himself, consultant, co-founder of the Campground Owners Expo.
Oh, wow.
And so he tragically passed away from a heart attack, and still very active in the industry. He was 72. So, very sad story. But I think important to note, this ties into what we've been discussing is that mom and pop, really striving to deliver that mom and pop service. I think it's a misconception that kind of mom and pop is like almost to use that term, it's almost an insult.
Right.
I've really shifted my thinking on that. That's a compliment, right? If you're offering mom and pop service, people think, oh, that's unsophisticated,
Absolutely.
But that's what the customers want is mom and pop.
Totally agree. And that's what gets lost at that's the challenge for someone like me. It's
right.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That connotation has certainly been spun maybe from the brokerage perspective, sales perspective in a negative way.
Right.
But that's what we serve. We strive to be like that.
Yeah. So in honor of Bud Steyer, let's all strive to take the lessons he taught us through his sharing his experience, 40 years in the business to deliver that mom and pop, service. I'm curious to hear from you. I would imagine you have some snowbird customers among your campgrounds. Do you see a lot of Canadians who visit your parks?
It's a great question. When we owned and operated a property in Page, Arizona, actually not for, really only for about a year. There we had actually a lot of international guests, oddly, particularly Canada. And then our Southeast portfolio, we tend to get, not quite as many Canadians. We get a lot of Michigan, Wisconsin type of people. I think you Canadians stop at like South Carolina. the Michiganders. They go all the way down to Florida.
Nice. Love it. Yeah. I bring that up because it's been a recurring bit of a story. I'm sure you've seen some of the reporting on it, but with the political kind of climate and some friction between our northern neighbors, it's had a real effect on our industry. I being in Syracuse, New York, I see it a lot. I looked at a number of campgrounds for sale in the Adirondacks that were 100% full season renters and 100% Canadians. And that scared the crap out of me. And this was back in COVID, where in COVID, every park in the country was booming. That was the story. It was rough for a few months. Oh, are we open? Are we closed? Can we operate? But then after that, it was best numbers in history. But I stumbled across some parks in the Adirondacks that were completely zeroed out because the Canadians could not cross the border. And that scared me about those parks. I never ended up buying anything in the Adirondacks. And part of me said, well, that's probably a once in a lifetime occurrence in COVID. And that's not exactly what's happening here, but it takes me back to those days because we're seeing it, right? I mean, AOA reports 4,300 cancellations, from Canadian customers. Maine, I grew up vacationing in southern Maine, which huge French Canadian, that's like going to Florida for people, for French Canadians. They're way down. Pathfinder is an interesting group to follow. That's actually publicly traded in the Canadian stock market. They are reporting the opposite because Canadians are staying home and camping in Canada. So we're seeing it from both ends there. CampSpot, they're obviously huge in our industry. They've reported that in 2024, Canadian travelers represented almost 3% of all U.S. campground bookings. In 2025, it was down to under 2%. We're talking about pretty significant decline, 35% or more.
Right.
It's happening. We see reports, top states affected, border states up here, Florida, Tennessee, Arizona, as you mentioned. Montana is also reporting it. So I think it goes to show you that, I've kind of personally been a person that says, I'd stay out of the politics. If the politics are affecting something, it's going to be short-lived. It's only 4 years or maybe 8 years. It's not going to be bad forever. I still kind of have that outlook, but you have any input on what we're seeing here?
It's something that I actually learned in the multifamily space when we were buying and building that portfolio of apartments. And it was taught to me by a lender, essentially, in a roundabout way, we're going for loans, doing underwriting, et cetera. And then tons and tons of questions about the demographics of the tenants. Ask the question, well, why? What's the deal? Well, we want to make sure that you're not exposed, i.e. we, the lender, are not exposed to anything, greater than 20 or 25%. And so that demographic could be students, could be military, it could be a single industry, it could be a single employer, et cetera, et cetera. And so that is, and that's what we're talking about here, right? Is it's, categorically, it's another nation, right? So if your business is entirely dependent on another nation, right, then yeah, it's pretty tough to take. This is the reason that we don't spend a lot of time looking at parks, up on the border and in the north. And the reason that we love the Southeast is because we have an immense amount of different demographics to market to. So it has not affected our portfolio at all. Our Q1 is actually up. I'll come back and look. I think we're up about 10% in revenue from Q1 of last year. So it hasn't affected us, which doesn't mean it's not important. But we, strategically are looking when we go to buy a property or thinking about that. So Midwest Texas, Oklahoma type stuff, same thing, right? Certain parks perform amazingly, but they're entirely dependent on either the oil industry or maybe even a specific drilling company. That to me is from an investment thesis is not something we tackle and jump into. So of course, you're always going to have a segment of your customer base that's going to be affected positively and negatively about politics or economics, et cetera. So the challenge and the accomplishment, I think, is then as an operator to find a way around it, right? Figure out what you're going to build up or boost to fill that hole for the next year or two or whatever it may be. Yeah,
well said. Well said. And that's a really nice segue actually to our next piece of news here, which GoRVing released their owner demographic report in conjunction with the RVIA, which I think is all encouraging stuff. I mean, it's a story that's been told that the RVing demographic is getting younger. They reported that the average age is now at 49 years old of an RV owner, which is really, really cool. And I think it signals continued growth for the industry, but I think it also it signals change for the industry because your 35 or 40-year-old RVer doesn't want the same things as your 60-year-old RVer. So, you've got a sizable portfolio. Have you seen any of that? Are you working on anything to kind of be able to serve both of those demographics? Do you see big changes coming down the pipeline?
Well, I think the next layer down to look at that those demographics is look at the what is important to me is we really dig in and want to look at the type of unit being sold and the matching demographic to that, and they're usually pretty closely correlated.
Yeah.
I.e., last time I looked, the big Class A diesel pushers, they're actually way down on unit sales, which corresponds to the changing unit, right? Because the typical buyer there is probably retired and probably has certainly a different level of disposable income to buy a $400,000 to $500,000 rig, and they're a different customer. They have different needs. They have different wants, et cetera. And then conversely, right, I would expect if we look at this, the travel trailer, price range $25,000 to like $60,000 purchase of the unit itself. The RV is probably I don't know last time I looked, that's the segment that's growing the fastest and the most unit sales, and that also corresponds to that younger age group, right? Cheaper, easier in. Well, it's also those rigs are much more well suited, even a fifth wheel, right? Much more well suited to a family. There's very few Class A's that have bunks. There's very few Class A's that have more than one bed. They're designed for two people, even though they're massive. Whereas a fifth wheel or travel trailer has bunks and beds anywhere you can put it, right? Put a bed up. If there's some square footage, we're putting a bed in it. So as we look at that sale, take it to the next level, look at the sale type, then that's an important thing for us to understand, right? Because that's what's our customer is going to be right now. But do they progress from travel trailer to big gooseneck to kids are out of the house to Class A? Well, we don't know that yet. So I don't know. I forgot what your question is, but did that answer it?
No, that answers it. Yeah, I mean, that's, to me, I think the challenge is like, right, like you look at the big resorts out there, they're kind of glorified RV parking lots. Mm-hmm. To me, that's like, I'm turning 34 in a couple weeks. Yeah. When I go camping, I want to find a nice slice of woods, right, where I don't see any other RVers. I fix it up. I like the resort with the nice pool and the nice store and the nice bathhouse. I do prioritize that, but like, I also want to feel like I'm camping. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I think people in my age group are prioritizing nature. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, part of my thesis is going forward over the next decade, 2 decades. I think there's going to be a real return to kind of the natural environment, spaced out sites.
Yeah, there's a prioritization there. And then it's also, we think through safety quite a bit too. So, I don't know. I want to make sure I'm not too many stereotypes here. But I'm 42 years old. I have 5 kids. 2 that were adopted and 1 that we foster. We live on a farm, right? Our kids grow up and they have we're pretty relaxed. Like they go outside, they're riding 4-wheelers, they're taking their BB guns at 7 years old and going shooting squirrels, right? So they're living life pretty much wide open. I think we're probably a bit of an exception nowadays to that type of parenting. And I'm not saying ours is better or worse, but as a business owner, I have to acknowledge that. Meaning, it makes most parents in less than 40 years old, as an example. It's a different world that we live in. Unfortunately, probably not as good as our 60 to 70-year-old RVers. So their mindset on child protection and raising, et cetera, is probably a lot more conservative. Like they want to see their kids. So why does that matter? So you start designing an amenity core and line of sight, right? So when you have a pool or a bathhouse or something that the parent can't see their children, that becomes, at least subconsciously, a big hurdle for them. Now, conversely, if you design it where they can sit at the bar or have their cooler and relax and see the whole area, and there's a fence around it, and they feel like they can finally relax because the design of the structure makes them relax, then they have a great experience. And that's a part they're going to want to come back to. And that's an experience they want to come back to. And so they won't think through that. Most people are not logically check marking that in there. But if that's what I think subconsciously, those are things that we want to think about when we're building a new park or designing a park. So, to your point, right? what are those desirabilities from a younger demographic that matter?
Yeah,
that's one that we think through.
For sure. That's really smart. And it resonates because I spent a month in an RV last season with an 18-month-old who, just learned how to run around. And you said so many things that were like, and we were on a tear. We did like 10 states in 30 days. Right. So we were no more than 2-3 nights in any location. And so packing up or breaking, setting up camp and then packing it up. It's like only one of us, me and my wife, could actually do that. And then the other one was like watching the kids, so we would trade off. Yeah. And he went and explored every single campsite. Yeah. We were like, all right, next time we got to get like one of the dog pens to put the kid in, because he'll be God knows where. So yeah, that's really smart. That's it shows that you're covering all your bases, which is
really do your best. Yeah, it is what we love about the industry too, though, is that it's one of the few places, outside of our farm that we do, we have parameters and stuff that we tell the kids, and they're getting a little bit older, but I have no problem letting them get on their bike and ride to the park and go. Like, people are generally pretty great in an RV park. So that's what I love about it.
For sure. So yeah, I think we'll move to wrap up here in a couple minutes. We had one more story that came out, which I think you'll have some really interesting perspective on. I'm sure this is a group that you've followed, RJourney.
Okay, yeah. Talk to them
a couple of reasons. They're a similar size to you. They acquired Advanced Outdoor Management about a year ago.
Okay.
And they just had a big refinance. So they refinanced a portfolio of 13 parks.
Okay.
Which I'm sure your team kind of perks up their ears, because you might be looking to do something similar maybe in the coming months, years, whatever. It's really good market data for what you're working on. So wondering,
Yeah.
Were you aware of that? Are you following them?
No, I'm really bad at following news. I should do better. So I have more questions than I have answers.
Well, listen to our podcast. You'll get it all.
Who is the lender? What were the rates?
Right. I don't think Woodall's publishes that, unfortunately, but that as a fellow real estate finance nerd, that was my first reaction. I'm trying to do some digging to find that out.
I'll give them a call and figure it out.
The BSC group. It sounds like that was the broker.
Okay.
It was CMBS loan, which I think is interesting. Yeah. That's come on as a more popular source of capital.
Yeah, it's a great
market. Have you explored CMBS? Have you used any CMBS loans or explored it?
Yeah, similar kind of thought process. We're there playing around with that type of, how can we? I've got lots of little loans here and there. How we can restructure this CMBS loan or some type of warehouse loan, some type of lender there. And again, that was actually one of our topics of discussion last night.
Nice.
We're working through. So, CMBS loan is a very powerful tool, long-term, right? When you go in CMBS loan, you're effectively locking yourself in there for a long time. So, leverage, I think typically around 50 to 65%, LTV, LTC, generally pretty good rates, but really cumbersome exit things. So yeah, that we're talking about similar things right now for us.
Nice. That's encouraging. It ties back to what we opened up with the investability. If CMBS loans become a reliable, prevalent source, which it sounds like they are, it's all points to a more investable asset class.
It's important for us to remember that lenders and investors have a problem too. They have a lot of capital right now that's undeployed, which means it's not making money. Now they're conservative because of all the variables out there, but there is a lot of eagerness too to find the right asset or the right operator, and when they do, doors start opening up. So they got a product. Their product is loans. If they're not making loans, they're not making money.
Yeah, so, for sure. Well said.
Well
said. So before we wrap up here, I want to give you a chance. You're working on some really cool stuff we've obviously talked about Unhitched Management and Unhitched RV and Climb Capital. You've put in a lot of effort into kind of the educational platform and the community. So tell us a little bit about that, and then tell us how people can get involved with that and how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. Thank you. So just run down the websites, I'm able to put them in show notes. I'm not sure how that works, but climbcapital.com is our investment company. Unhitched RV. Love for you guys to check that out. Brand new website. That's to the customer. That's the brand. I think it's pretty cool. We spent a lot of time developing it. Really love what that's looking like. So that's unhitchedrv.com. And that's where you can book sites and see the properties, so on and so forth. And then Unhitched MGMT, Unhitched MGMT, like management.com is our website for management, consulting, resources, etc. And then, as Matt mentioned, we are, I would say, still very much in the beginning phase of rolling out more of an education platform, consulting platform that we, call RBU by Unhitched. And that currently, we've got a Facebook group. You can find it by, putting an RBU Unhitched on there. And we own a couple Facebook, other larger buy sell groups that we've purchased over the last few months. What else should we talk about? So it all ties together. Like, we have this family of companies, and then we say at the heart of it, right, is to elevate the RV industry for the guests, for the investors, for the owners, right, for us. And so all those, we think, really are work in tandem like a flywheel, when one supports the other, and so on and so forth. And so we're trying to get that flywheel moving. It's got a little momentum. We want to pour some more fire on that and go.
Yeah, I think you're a modest guy. You've got some incredible stuff in the works, and it's impressive to see. And I've enjoyed following along. So again, I owe you one for jumping on last minute. I think you did an awesome job with about 3 minutes of prep time. So appreciate it. I think we'll end it here. And appreciate you, Robert, and looking forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Thanks for the show.